It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, it's the 100th anniversary of Walter Beech moving to Wichita. Former Beechcraft employees reflect upon this turning point in both aviation and Wichita history. And you'll see how Walter and his wife Olive Ann are portrayed as never before in a new opera titled Staggerwing. We'll hear from the creators and actors and get a sneak peek at the world premiere. Also, we'll meet a Wichita musician who's helping give the blues genre a refresh. Hear from the author of a new book about historic Wichita restaurants, and learn about a Kansas butterfly that goes against the grain. It has a look and lifestyle all its own. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sierra Scott. A half hour of information and inspiration is coming your way on Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by...
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank Trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
It was 1 century ago when noted Wichita aviator Walter Beech landed in the city to work at the Swallow Aircraft Company. Just over a decade later, Walter and Olive Ann formed the Beech Aircraft Company. Chris Frank talks with 2 Beech retirees about the impact this aviation power couple had on their lives and on the Wichita community.
The story we always heard.
Pat Lehman and Judy Pierce have fond memories of their days at Beech Aircraft. Both started working at Beech in 1965 when very few women worked in the factory.
I was one of the first 3 women in my department. The other 2 didn't last, and I did.
Lehman was the first ever female tool and die maker at Beechcraft. Both say women working in the Beech factory was so rare back in the 60s, there weren't restroom facilities for them.
There was no bathroom facilities for women in that whole area that I was in. So I wound up having to go out to the front office bathrooms. That's where they told me to go.
Pierce says she didn't have any particular work skills when she started at Beech one day after her 18th birthday. She said Beech taught her while she worked.
I just got out of high school. I didn't really have any skills, but I told them I was ready to work. And they said they'd teach me, and they did.
Olive Ann Beech was the chief executive of Beechcraft when the 2 started work there. This was 15 years after the death of Walter Beech in 1950.
Mrs. Beech was a very good employer. Yes, she was. I think we all had tremendous respect for her because she was, talk about a pioneer. She was a lone woman running an international company and running it very successfully.
Lehman says everyone at the company had a lot of respect for Mrs. Beech.
But she cared a lot about her employees, too. At one time, you couldn't get fired out at Beech unless it went through Mrs. Beech and Mr. Beech. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how much they cared about their employees. She also had the most loyal workforce of any because people knew that about her.
Lehman's father worked at Beech, so she says she grew up with an appreciation for the plane maker. Now, something this reporter has often heard about the original Beech Company is that Beech liked to hire relatives of current employees. The thinking was those relatives, applying for a job, likely had a favorable view of the company from family members already working there. The Beech Company had a reputation for keeping work in the family.
So there were a lot of family connections. My sister worked at Beech. My nephew worked at Beech. Her father-in-law worked at Beech. My dad worked at Beech. My husband worked at Beach.
It was all in the family?
Yeah, we were all in the family. Absolutely, we were.
And that's what Beach retirees told me for the PBS Kansas documentary, Wichita, the Air Capital.
A very good company to work for.
It's a Friday morning when Beach retirees meet at a Southeast Wichita cafeteria. They talk about what a family affair it was to work there when it was under family management.
I think they made it known that they wanted to hire family members.
Sharon Nichols worked at Beach 43 years. Her dad, brother, 2 sisters worked at Beach, as well as aunts, uncles, and cousins. Lehman says there were occasions she ran errands for Mrs. Beach, but anytime she had to go to Ollie Van's office, there was always one thing she did.
Well, you take off your shoes, first thing, because you didn't want to track all that oil and dirt from the shop onto her carpet.
Mrs. Beach was known as a stickler on that. And then there were those mood flags Mrs. Beach would post outside of the office door. There were 7 of them. Employees tread very lightly if the whoa flag was posted.
Yeah.
What about those flags?
Well, she had flags on her desk, and as the oh happy day flag was raised up, then it was a good day and everybody was getting along fine. If it was not, you wanted to walk and tread very softly and do whatever you were supposed to do.
These Beechcrafters say the company's first lady's style was always impressive.
Mrs. Beach was standing out on the runway by her plane, and I thought she was one of the most elegant people I'd ever seen in my life. I'll never forget, she had on a beautiful outfit. She always dressed so well.
It was common for the rich and famous, including Hollywood and sports stars, to come to the Wichita plants to pick up their purchased planes. Lehman talks about a funny story when the beer magnate Augie Bush Jr. stopped by.
Augie Bush Jr. bought a Staggerwing, and when he came out to pick it up, there were people wearing Coors caps working on his plane.
Coors and Budweiser, of course, are beer competitors.
And he did not like that at all. And he went back to St. Louis, and he shipped enough Bud Light caps for everybody, and it was restricted to union members. And he wanted to see that people were wearing Bud caps, not Coors caps, working on his plane. I thought it was interesting because my husband got one of the caps.
Both look back on their work there with pride.
No. We were proud to work there and proud to do something back for what they did for us. I'm a Beechcrafter, and I always will be. I'm a Beechcrafter's kid, and I will always be a Beechcrafter.
That's an attitude any company would want employees to have. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
Lehman and Pierce took breaks from Beach to work at the Machinists Union, which represented plant workers in contract negotiations. Both became secretary-treasurers at the union. Part of the Beechcraft story is told in a brand new production composed expressly for a local opera company by 2 New York composers. The main characters are Walter and Olive Ann Beach, and 2 female aviators they recruited who made history. Jim Grayway has that story.
If you get long-term payments, but you need cash now.
Watching a silly TV commercial may be the closest a lot of people ever get to experiencing opera. Opera Kansas hopes to break opera's stuffy, antiquated image with more contemporary and relatable stories like Staggerwing.
One of our major goals is that we want to tell the stories that haven't been told yet, the stories about the hidden figures.
It is the winner of the latest Zepic Modern Opera competition.
I'm going to California to learn to fly.
I looked at the proposal and I was like, oh, this one's going to win. Because it was a story for Wichita. It was a story for us. It was a story about our people, our contributions to the world.
Staggerwing is based on the true story of Olive Ann and Walter Beach and their idea to promote their new C-17 airplane by having 2 women fly one in the 1936 Bendix Trophy race.
It was the first year that all female teams were able to compete in this race.
These aviation trailblazers, Louise Thaden and Blanche Noyes, shocked the world by winning the race.
It's inspiring that they had the guts to go against the norm at the time and in such a dangerous field.
It wasn't anything to laugh at. I mean, flying at that time was extremely dangerous. Like, you could die on takeoff or landing or at any point in the air.
Lisa Despain and Rachel J. Peters from New York City submitted the idea. In winning the competition, they were commissioned to compose and stage the complete production for a Wichita premiere. That premiere took place at the Kansas Aviation Museum.
Part of what's so fun about being an artist is the chance to slip on somebody else's shoes and to really learn about, like, Wichita. We are in love with Wichita. It has been just a delight to be here.
Beechcraft will not fall, for he is in.
The actor who played Walter Beach says he had never played a role like this.
Nothing that's so closely tied to the community in which we're performing it. Nearly everyone in this town has some connection to Beechcraft, and with many of Walter and Olivan's descendants still alive and wanting to preserve their legacy, we feel the need to do them justice in the way that we're portraying these characters.
Just as Louise Thaden, Blanche Noyes, and the Beaches made history in 1936, Opera Kansas made history in 2021 by telling this story in a way that it had never been told before. For Positively Kansas, I'm Jim Grayway.
Ashley Winters of Opera Kansas hopes to take Staggerwing on the road for performances in other cities across the state in 2022. Now to a Wichita band leader who's busy tearing up the blues, bluegrass, and folk music scene with not one, but two groups he leads. Anthony Powell caught up with Dustin Arbuckle, who says he's been heavily influenced by another Wichita blues musician we featured on a past episode of Positively Kansas.
Build me a log cabin on a mountain so high.
On a steamy summer's day, Dustin Arbuckle and one of his bands, the Haymakers, sizzled on the Brickyard stage. The Haymakers sound is formed from numerous types of music, attracting fans from Kansas, across America, and even overseas. But it's Wichita, where Dustin was born and raised and still lives, that you'll find their most loyal supporters.
I appreciate Dustin's artistry. He's an amazing talent.
Dustin is thankful for his amazing fans and the place he's always called home. While many musicians flock to bigger cities, he's always stayed put right here in the Air Capital.
Wichita's home. And to be frank, as a touring musician, the cost of living is low and manageable here. And being in the middle of the country, you can get anywhere within a day's drive.
And Dustin and his bandmates do a lot of driving, performing all over Kansas and the U.S., and occasionally flying for international gigs. Dustin is the ultimate road warrior. That's because in addition to the Haymakers, he also leads a band.
But now since you've been gone,
called the Damnations.
With the Damnations, we have sort of this cross-genre electric roots Americana vibe where there's blues there and there's soul music there and there's kind of alt country and roots rock and even some jazz influence. With Haymakers, it's more kind of folk, country, bluegrass, acoustic, string band sort of a vibe.
Dustin says leading two bands gives him an incredible opportunity to play different kinds of music and collaborate with many talented musicians. But as the main scheduler for the Haymakers and the Damnations, he says the logistics can get pretty overwhelming. But that's not the only thing that makes the music business tough at times.
Unless you get to a certain level, you don't make a ton of money. It's definitely kind of a labor of love sort of a situation. And it's hard to be on the road a lot and be away from your family.
The road, though, is what Dustin has known for much of his adult life. Back in the early 2000s, he formed a band called Moreland and Arbuckle. Moreland and Arbuckle had a lot of success, touring extensively all over the world and scoring record deals with several labels. He's hoping his current groups, the Haymakers and Damnations, can reach that level. So, just how did Dustin get so into the blues?
My dad was really into it, but I wasn't that conscious of it until my mid-teens, and then I just kind of started hearing it and becoming conscious of the music, and it just struck me and hit me in a way that almost nothing else ever had.
And at that young age, he knew playing music was what he wanted to do for life. When it comes to musical influences, Dustin lists a number of traditional blues artists, including many Kansans, such as iconic harmonica player Lee McBee and Wichitan Bill Garrison, who we profiled on an earlier episode of Positively Kansas. You see, Dustin grew up with Bill and credits Garrison for introducing him to the harmonica. Bill Garrison was a very well-known Wichita blues musician who passed away in 2020 and was honored in early 2021 by the Kansas Senate for his tremendous contribution to the state's music scene. Dustin's dad was good friends with Bill and introduced his son to him.
Bill played me these old blues records and picked up his guitar and harmonica and played us songs. And it was the first time I'd actually got to really see someone play harmonica in person.
That got Dustin hooked on the harmonica, and he says he will always be grateful to Bill Garrison for being such an influence and a supporter. Grateful is the word Dustin would use to describe his life. He's got a beautiful family and gets to make people feel good, even relive happy childhood memories by playing music.
My grandma was on the banjo, great-grandpa had a fiddle, her sister was on the piano, so they had a family band, right?
Well, it's all American, goes back to the roots of American music, local singers and the songwriters. And they play homage, to a lot of the original people.
Yes, whether he's leading the Haymakers or the Damnations, Dustin Arbuckle knows he's one lucky guy, making a living at something he's always been so passionate about.
Thank you all very much.
For Positively Kansas, I'm Anthony Powell.
As if Dustin isn't busy enough playing with the Haymakers and the Damnations, he's also part of a guitar harmonica blues duo with an Iowa musician friend named Matt Woods. Now to the great outdoors, where the change of seasons has a life-changing consequence for animals of all kinds. In this week's Kansas Wild Edge Report, Mike Blair gives us an up-close look at some often overlooked butterflies who prepare for cold weather in a way all their own.
The cool nights and hazy days of late summer mark the decline of another growing season. You see it in the color, the dewy early mornings and the winding down of small creatures whose time is now limited. And so it is with the second generation of a colorful Kansas butterfly, the goatweed leafwing. This pert orange flyer is somewhat obscure. It prefers open fields near its food plant, croton, a twiggy and leafy shrub-like plant. And the butterfly is not easy to spot despite its bright color. First-generation adults of late spring live for only about a week while laying eggs. When resting, their normally folded wings perfectly mimic a dead leaf. And not often do their brightly colored upper wings attract attention. More so, these butterflies don't commonly nectar on flowers. Their feeding tubes are short and stout, too small to efficiently reach plant sugars. Instead, in the manner of some other butterflies and insects, they feed on plant sap, fermented fruits, and even animal dung. Here, a leaf wing feeds on a drying watermelon rind. I began filming goatweed leafwings in late July. New butterflies were then pairing and laying eggs, and I searched acres of scattered plants to find a dozen single eggs deposited on croton leaves. It was a waiting game as the tiny larvae grew and fed. These caterpillars are easily overlooked since they blend almost perfectly with the leaves they feed on. As they grow, they often use silk to create tight shelters in which to hide. The caterpillar stage lasts from 4 to 6 weeks, spanning 5 instars. Sometimes mature larvae are found with new eggs of a partial third generation. When larvae are fully mature, they spin up chrysalids that again blend very well among the food plant leaves. This stage lasts up to 14 days, and it clears to show the orange butterfly inside about a day before emergence. When all is ready, the chrysalid splits open and the new butterfly crawls out to dry. It may stay near the empty chrysalis for half a day, alternately pumping its beautiful wings and excreting excess fluids from this final life change. Leaf wings found now will live until frost, finally crawling deep into thick cover and overwintering as adults, unusual in the butterfly world. Then in spring they'll mate and start the process all over again. Goatweed leafwings. Watch for them in Kansas summer fields. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
If you love to eat, and who doesn't, the person sitting next to me, you will definitely recognize her face. Denise Neal, been with the Eagle for a very long time. We won't say how long. A very, very dear friend. You are amazing. I love watching everything you write. And now you've written a book.
Yes.
And I think that's so cool. And I've actually read it. So
Thank you, Sierra.
It's going to be fun to talk about this book. First of all, it's about the history of restaurants in Wichita.
Right.
Is that a good definition
That's
of what it
exactly
is?
right. It's kind of a capsule of all the restaurants that opened over the years in our city that people miss and wish were still around. And the publisher came to me with the idea, and I knew that it would work because over the years of writing it about restaurants at the Eagle, some of the most popular stories that I write are about when I ask people, if you could bring any restaurant back that you remember from your past, which one would it be? And I would always get tons of views on those stories, but more important, I would get the same answers over and over. So I knew there was a group of maybe 100 restaurants that kind of really are iconic in our histories, in our city's past.
I think it is, and what I love is that you were able to, because a lot of these restaurants have extreme amounts of history behind them, and you kind of boiled down to the most interesting bullet points, I want to say, and they're really interesting to read about.
Well, thanks. I also do.
Is there one that kind of stands out to you the most, or is there one that kind of surprised you, the history of it?
Tons of them surprised me. One example I tell people is I was getting close to done with the book, and I went to see Tim Marie and Patrick Shibley over at Doodah Diner, and I noticed a menu hanging on the wall there. And I said, Tim Marie, what is this menu from? And it was from a club called Camille's, which I found out. I've known Patrick for years. His father, Kay Shibley, started a nightclub called Camille's, which then led on to, he hired two guys named Tom and Sonny. Tom and Sonny opened Tom and Sonny's. Then Sonny went to Scotch and Sirloin. Tom opened Tommy's. And I had no idea, one, that Patrick came from restaurant royalty, or two, just the whole, history and progression of one restaurant birthing another one. So just to find out, that I knew people. And a friend of ours, Jeannie Robertson.
Yeah.
Her father opened a restaurant called the Old Way Station. I knew about the Old Way Station for years. I had no idea it was her father who had opened it. So just finding out the connections to present day was really interesting to me.
And I agree with you, because it is a historical kind of look, which I'm fascinated by as well. So even to me, people outside Wichita Wichita, or maybe have never even been to Wichita. That's still an interesting book.
Yeah.
And there are some restaurants that started here that launched nationally, so you
Yes.
kind of get a look at those as well.
Yes, I mean, you could not write a story about Wichita's restaurant history without talking about, I would say, our two biggies, which are White Castle,
Yep.
the one that really gets under Wichita skin.
I know.
People are not happy about White Castle because White Castle started here as a little tiny burger stand, and then the founder got a partner. They made more White Castles, and then they moved the headquarters to Ohio, and they sold their Wichita locations to a man named A.J. Jimmy King, who went on to start the King's X dynasty, which now has given us Jimmy's Diner and all those things. So White Castle, people are very upset it's not still here, even though it's our place. And then, of course, Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut was started here in the 50s by two brothers, and it made a huge impact on our town and obviously on the nation. And so the Pizza Hut franchise is one that I obviously got the history of that one into, because that's our hometown place.
In fact, I posted about your book, this is funny, and I said something specifically about White Castle. People piled on.
Oh yeah, they're not happy. They're not happy. It's not fair.
What's great is this book is already sold out. You're in the second printing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is worth reading. It was fun. I couldn't put it down. I actually read it in one night, which is crazy. But I just thought it was so interesting. So if somebody wants to get it, where do they get it, Denise?
Well, there's a variety of ways to get it. It's in stock at Watermark Books. I think Barnes & Noble's restocked. But if you want a autographed copy, I've got several events coming up. Yes, you can get it signed for me. You can look at my Facebook page, Classic Restaurants of Wichita, or you can email me at classicrestaurantsofwichita@gmail.com, and I've been arranging ways to get signed copies to people also.
Well, thank you for doing this book, because seriously, even though, again, I wasn't here during a lot of this, it was neat to see the history and, again, learn about the people whose families kind of progressed Wichita. So thank you for writing it.
Well, thank you for reading it.
Absolutely. Well, it's time to say goodbye and hit the road. Be sure to jot down this email address, positivelykansas@kpts.org. We appreciate your comments and story ideas. We hope you enjoyed the show. I'm Sierra Scott. See you later.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.